Okay, so here are your sources for today's lesson. You have your loop reading questions at the top. So the idea here is that as you read through the sources, you'll be able to answer these three questions as you go. First, how does Grady describe the status of African Americans in Georgia in 1889? Second, what is Brockett's assessment of the status of African Americans? So to kind of frame it, number one, what does Grady say about the lives of black Southerners? And then two, what does Brockett then say? And then third, how and why does Brockett use if-then statements to construct a counter-argument? So I want to clear this one up because I can easily see this one turning confusing. The idea here is that we have Grady source, the first one, and as you scroll down, we hit Brockett source, the second one. Now, he's going to use the same sentence theme once you get to a certain point in the reading itself, which are if-then statements. So he'll say something like, if he is peaceful, surely the South does not fear an uprising. So you might not see then, but it's the idea of, well, if there's this, then there must be this. And he's going to continue to use that structure throughout his speech, with the goal being for you as like, well, why? Why is that going to be effective to make this counter argument to what Grady is saying? What I really want to focus on, because I think that these questions will end up being pretty straightforward, they're right next to the paragraph that you'll find the info. So, for example, these two questions you can find here in the first paragraph, and then similarly with these ones. So what I really want to focus on is how I want to see your notes and your annotations. So if I'm going to look ahead, the first thing I want to do really is look at my source. So Henry W. Grady, speech delivered to Boston Merchants Association, 1889. He was a white man and editor of the Atlanta Constitution, which was the leading newspaper at the time. So there's a few things we really want to pick out here. Number one, before I even dive into that, the goal of making these notes is to, one, identify why a source is the way it is, and then two, to be able to then use that information to help us with our CHQ later on. So we're looking for that key bits of information that can tell us what is Grady, well, really what is Grady, or who is Grady as a person? What is his point of view? Why does he have these points of views? What is he likely to say because of those things? So, for example, we can say that he is a white man, right? Given everything we've learned about, and I'm going to make a comment right there, uh, dominant power in the South. Okay, so I'll make the comment there. Given what we know about this time period, we know that there is intense suppression of black attempts at power via voting, via education, all those things. And so that leads to a white supremacy in the South. We also know that he's giving a speech, right? And he's the editor of the Atlanta Constitution, which was the leading newspaper at the time, right? So if I want to make a comment, we can say has influence in the South, right? The idea here is if you have a newspaper, you can then give information. Information is really powerful. The way that you can say something or frame something can influence how people think. So him being the editor for a newspaper, as I accidentally click, is going to be super important as far as what we think about him, as well as just what's going on in Atlanta. I'm going to jump a little bit further ahead. Actually, before I do that, I'm messing up a little bit, but it's fine. We want to condense these two bits of information. So the idea here is because can't type either. Grady was a white man who owned a newspaper in the South. He is likely to want to continue to keep the status quo. To translate status quo being like keep things the same, right? Because he's incentivized to keep them the same. He's in power. He gets to control information. This is really good for him, as well as the fact that we know, based on our previous information, that he wants to bring money to the South. Okay. What does Grady say about them, our African Americans, in the first paragraph? And then what does he mean when he said they're unequal in intelligence and responsibilities? So when you're making these notes, notice how I read the questions first. The idea here is you're looking for specific bits of information. So I found, number one, that this is what he says. Absolutely unequal, right? He says that they have equal political and civil rights. So we can highlight this. Boom. But absolutely unequal intelligence and responsibility. Boom. And I'm out of time. Good luck.